Hello, welcome to another quick Argus demonstration. And here we are, let's create a little new animation, shall we, that shows some of the other modulation aspects. As usual with a new project, we have the camera track with a camera at -7, light at -7. Let's create a new track for a new object. We'll call this test. Why not? The old nugget test. We'll be use the Max the clown. Dear old Max. It's in Films Max the clown. So I'll type that. Max the clown. So that's where Argus will look for its texture. By default, without a drive name, it will search in the Argus folder. So my Argus installation, like yours, will have Films Max the Clown and Films Argus Cube. But generally speaking, you'll probably want some fancy full path with a drive letter. Let's create a flat plane with a left click. Bang. And we'll call this Max. Max000.dds. We get a path there. And when we look at it, that's what it's called, max00.dds. Let's create Max with the press of a Q on frame 0. And hit F1, let's have a look. There he is. Charming Max. Now Max will explore some of the different shading modes and different ways of controlling what the object looks like in this demonstration. So first we'll go to the light track. You'll see we've got red, green, blue, 111, meaning fully white. So let's change that lighting a bit. Let's make it red and green, so that will be yellow, fully yellow. Let's have a look and see what that looks like. Voila, we've changed the lights. You can, of course, change these things programmatically. It's a start event on frame 2. So if we went to the light actor here, main light act 2, and then created another event, move to another frame number 1, hit Q again. We've got an event on frame 1 now. Frame 0, -7, 1, 1, 0. I'll place the light where the other one is, -7. If incidentally you hit the E key, it will duplicate the positions of the first object, which is useful at times. So we've got 1, 1, 0, that's the yellow light. We'll change this to, let's make it a blue light, shall we? 1, 0, 0, 1, that should be a blue light. So on frame 0, we have a yellow light. On frame 1, we have a blue light. Let's have a look what that looks like. Yellow light, bing. I'm stepping through time here with the arrow keys. Up, down, up, 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 down, 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 down. So on frame 1, the light changes blue. I hit F1 again, get back to the Windows editor. And so you can see it's just a matter of creating events and moving them around in terms of you can programmatically make exact things happen on exact frames, which itself is really handy. A lot of film editing software is so inexact, or it takes an awful lot of time to get things really exactly right. Sometimes that's for speed reasons, but in this particular case you can program exact things to happen. It makes it really technically amazing. So we've got our light with yellow. Let's make the light change colour. Now we can modulate any of these numbers with these pink boxes, just like you can modulate how Max moves, the angles, the sizes, etc. The frame as well, if you use an animated texture. You'll see the texture is 0, 0, 0, 0. But if you wanted, you could create more textures, more frames, and make the texture itself animate, in which case you would just modulate the frame number. But let's go back to the light, and we'll change the colour. Let's make the red pulse in and out over the course of 25 frames. Yeah, that sounds okay. So if we ran this, I'll switch the blue on, so it should be fully white. So if it ran this, it would add 1 here. Now, because red is already at 1, it's not going to really do anything. But when it gets to here, which will be about frame 12.5, it will start becoming dimmer. So it will suddenly become more cyan. Let's have a look if our prediction is correct. Hit F1. Yeah, it looks normal. We're about frame 13. Oh, there we are, more cyan, and it'll wobble out. If I hit F5, we can watch the whole thing live. Vroom, vroom. Disco Max. I hit the home key, it takes it back to 0. Hit F1 again, we're back in the Windows editor. So that's how briefly you can modulate the colours, but you could modulate anything, the positions, you can make the light move. Let's attach this wob thing to the X position. See what this does. Very little. It is moving imperceptibly, but because the light is shining straight down from a distance of 7 units, the difference in brightness is negligible, minuscule really. There was something happening there, I promise. Right, we'll switch off the light completely now. I've ticked this, and these boxes all correspond with, they're like mute icons. So I've basically muted the light track. You can't really mute the first track, that's always on. But you could possibly choose to mute the camera by moving the camera to a different track. You can never turn the camera off. If you muted it, it would simply be at position 000, looking at an angle 000. But the option is there. So I've turned the light off now. If we view the scene now, max should be just a black square. Let's have a look. Where we are, black. I'll hit F1 again. But it's possible to have scenes that don't use lights, and we do that by affecting the shading button here. So if I set the shading to bright, a left click will cycle through all the options. A blue button means it cycles. That's the rule of this GUI. Normal, bright. So now, even though there's no light, max should be visible. And that is, he's completely bright there. He's not lit at all. So no matter what happens in the lighting, he's going to stay lit. And in fact, bright objects are very common and pretty useful, because it's rare that you'll probably want lighting effects. Most of the things you create are going to be bright. Let's make him semi-transparent. So I'll set the alpha to 50, 0.5. So he's 50% transparent. Let's have a look. There we are. Ghostly max. And I'll now add a second max. And he's exactly like the first one. Oh, see, I've hit Q there, but it's created the light because of actor 2 is the current actor. I didn't want that, so I'll delete it. And I'll go to max. Then I will click Q. There we are. I'm going to make him twice the size. No, actually, I'll make the first one twice the size, because he'll be in the background. Objects are always printed from top to bottom, left to right, and the layering matters, particularly when you're messing around with transparency. The explicit control of the order in which they print is actually really useful as well. Sometimes you'll want to swap tracks around. But how it is at the moment, we've got one clown there of size 2 and another clown in an identical place of size 1. But I've just set the transparency to half. I'll change that to 0. So we've got 2 full clowns, one in the background at size 2, one in the foreground size 1. Let's have a look what that looks like. As expected. We're playing with fire a little here because they're in exactly the same position. You're never really sure what's going to happen in those situations. So I'm going to move this one a little bit forwards. Let's make this -1 and have a look at that. So the smaller square is now towards us a little bit. That will stop any problems because we've got a Z buffer active. If I switched that off, it might confuse things. For example, if I could probably switch the Z buffer off for both of these. It's the same. It applies to the same object, costume number 1, and it's fine. But for sometimes, if the Z buffer is on, the Z buffer will stop objects that are distant printing over the top of objects in the foreground. That's the aim of it, which you don't normally want in 3D. But I'm going to mess around with some of the blending modes here. So I'm going to change the costume of the front max. So I'm going to clone this one. So this is costume number 2 now. So I've got 2 costumes, both called Max, both identical. And as soon as I cloned it, a second actor was created, actor 4. Actor 3 points to Max, the first Max. Actor 4 points to the second Max. You'll see in our animation though, they'll still say actor 3. It would be really confusing if that started to be messed up. So we need to set the lower one as actor 4. So suddenly actor 4, which is, well, might as well call him Max 2. Why not? Actually, a good way to rename it is to rename this. So we'll call it Max 2, and it's automatically named its linked actor. This is Max 1 here. Max 2. So we've got Max 1 in the background. Max 2 is the smaller square on top. The reason I've done 2 is that it allows me to experiment with how the second one looks relative to the first. So if I switch off lighting for the second one, so I'll make this a normal object, you'll note the light here is still off. There's no lights in this scene. So if I hit F1, the background Max, which is lit, will be light. The foreground one will be a black square because he's not lit. The lights are off. So I'll set this to bright again. I'll change the blending mode to add. Now the colours will now add together rather than simply appearing normal over the top of each other. There we are. The top one has added to the bottom one. This creates interesting effects when things move. So I'm going to move the top clown over the top of the first one. I'll use this modulator 1. So I'll make this wobble left and right, and let's have a look. And then you can see what the add blend mode has done with the way the texture is rendered there. And there are a few other blend modes. So we've got bold. Let's have a look at what bold looks like. It's affected the way that the darker colours have worked. You can see it's the yellow border of the background clown is still a bit visible. They all look a little different. The ghost effect, acetate, and normal. So that's a brief guide to some of the different blending modes and options, and another further guide to how Argus does things.